Well, ladies, we've got a great number of people on the call. I think it's time for us to get underway. Do you agree? Fantastic. So welcome. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We've got a really great webinar coming up over the next hour or so to share with you some of the latest inside thinking around branding, around team building, and around how you can communicate to get the most value for your business out of 2021. We've got two amazing speakers this morning. We're going to be kicking off with Rosina Webb from Energize. He'll be sharing all about how to think about your brand and make that communication, and some very thought-provoking activities as well for you to get involved with and develop out your brand over the course of the holidays and going into 2021. Then we've got Lisa McKay from HR Toolkit, who will be sharing some more about communication, about what's going on with the team and how you can put your best foot forward for 2021. So your team, your brand, and you will be the most valuable powerhouse in 2021. It's great to be able to welcome Rosina to as our first speaker today. So Rosina Webb is the founder and the brand director of Energize, a marketing and digital agency. Along with her team of expert energizers, they help Kiwi brands to grow, compete, and to achieve. And Rosina, great to see you along this morning. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'd like to invite you now to take it away with your presentation.
Oh, thanks, Grant. Yes, I'll just, here we go. Okay, so yes, thank you again, Grant. Welcome, everyone. So let's get started on your biggest brand advantage. So what is branding? What is it all about? We say, you know, it's how your company appears to the world. And I think the big question, the big word there is appears. Look, whether we like it or not, we all have a brand. And we all have a brand because we all have values and personality, and we have aspirations. So therefore, we all have a brand. It's about whether we leverage it positively or negatively. And that affects as to how we appear in the market, how we appear to our customers and our potential customers as well. So a lot of the presentation today, what we're going to talk about is how to leverage your brand and build your brand most positively you can. Okay, another quote that I absolutely love about branding is your brand is what other people say when you're not in the room. So I really want you now to sort of ask that question of yourselves. What would people say about you and your company right now? So there's a bit of free brand research for you. I think of it as the logo. That's often the thing that comes up all the time. No, it's just the logo. Well, that's just a tiny wee bit of branding. The bigger part is brand is like the sum of experiences someone has with you and your company. So what we mean is, you know, an experience is like how you answer your phone, for example, how you deal with a complaint, how you deliver your products and services. Those are all experiences people have with you. And as you can see, a lot of experiences are delivered by your people and your team, which is an important part of branding. And Lisa's going to talk a lot more about that in her presentation. There's other marketing assets too that need to support and be an ambassador of your brand, like your website. You know, can I order online effortlessly? If I have any issues, is there some frequently asked questions I can go to? How can I navigate through my website easily? If you have brochures, do your words reflect your brand? Is your imagery outdated and sad? And it's right down to more tangible things, like even, you know, your reception area. Is it got outdated furniture, outdated colours? Is it got the right decor surrounding it? And this is even before we get to meeting your receptionist or your customer service person. So brand incorporates all those things. Probably the nirvana of branding is when you actually make someone feel something about you. So, for example, I asked my team the other day, what brands did they think make an emotional connection with them, made them actually feel something. And the one company that came up quite a bit, not for everyone, but came up quite a lot, was Whittaker's. Now, okay, it's chocolate, and chocolate's pretty gorgeous and gooey and comforting. But the other thing around it was the thought that it was a Kiwi battler taking on the big sorts like Cadbury's, and had done really well in that area. So a lot of people felt very proud around the Whittaker's brand. And I think that, when you reach that point, it's incredibly powerful as a brand because you get loyalty. And, as we all know, loyalty drives profitability. So on to our building blocks here of branding. We're going to go through each of these. So the first one being purpose, the second one being brand, vision, the other one being values, and lastly, we're going to talk about personality. Look, I think it would be probably true for you to say that you instinctively have all this stuff in your head. But, it really is time, if we want to have our team involved in being brand ambassadors and understanding your brand, it's time to actually document this and starting to share it with our team. Also, if you're going to brief suppliers and agencies around branding your website or collateral or brochures, this is an excellent briefing document. I don't want you to kind of spin out at this stage to think, crikey, how do I do all this? There's a lot of resources at the back end of my presentation to support you. So don't worry, it's all there, and we'll have a sneak peek of those at the end. So our first building block is purpose. So why your company exists today. And it is not making money, which a lot of people, first of all, tell me. Making money is an outcome of why you exist, not the reason. So you may have heard this called, there's all kind of names. A mission statement is kind of similar, the same as a purpose. You may have been called it's, your why. All of those things are other names for purpose. But ultimately, it's around very, very much today. It's often also around your customer. So why you exist for your customer. And based on that, a lot of it is the reason why we actually share this with our customers. So it's a very customer-driven centric statement that is very, very based on why you're existing today and what you can give to them. So let's actually have a look at a really good framework. So this is called the golden circle to help you thinking about your purpose. Now, I would love to say that I was the one that developed this, but I'm not. This was developed by one of my heroes, Simon Sinek, and his video is in the resource notes. You've got to watch it because it will give greater context to the golden circle. So look, what I'll do is I'll just briefly go through it, knowing that you're going to watch that video and be able to actually populate this further. So what he talks about is the what and the how and the why. And I guess as brands, we're really good about talking about the what and the how, but we're not so good about understanding the why. And a big thing that Simon Sinek says is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and the why being the purpose. So looking at it from the outside in, our what is our offer, what you sell, whether you're selling baked beans, service, product, software, websites, whatever, it's just what your offer is. The how is your competitive advantage, so why someone should buy from you and not someone else, and the value that you give to your customers. So, the what and the how sometimes is can be called your escalator pitch, some people call it. But we'd like to go one step further and say, so how does the why play out in all that? How does the why affect our how and our what? And I've got a very good example here around Apple. I'm just using it because everyone knows it. But Apple does really, really well in thinking about their why is around challenging the status quo. And that's what they do. So challenge the status quo, we believe in thinking differently. How does that affect our health? Well, the way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. And isn't that a reason why we all, well, I know that's the reasons why I use Apple anyway. And the what of course, they make great digital devices, whether it's, the iPhone, the iPad, or the Apple Watch, and so forth. So challenging the status quo is what's driving a lot around what happens at Apple. And it's a lot about why we perceive Apple to be as authentic as what they do, because they do it all the time. Look, I just thought it would be good to have some other brands here, some other big brands here, about what some of their purpose statements are. I'm sure some of these are no surprise. Here we have Tesla around, having an economy towards a more solar electric economy. Air New Zealand to champion and promote New Zealand. Google around the world's information. I love this one about Nike because it reminds me of the time that I'm an athlete. Yeah, right. To bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. If you have a body, you're an athlete. So this is what their purpose statement is. This is what this is their customer-centric statement. So I really encourage you, watch Simon Sinek and really have a go at trying to fill out your golden circle. Okay, our second our second building block is all around vision, brand vision. And the thing that is how it is quite different from our why or our mission statement or our purpose is that it is absolutely futuristic. It's about your future success. It's not about today. It's what you're striving for long term. But there's it's not a goal. There's no kind of arrival date. I mean, you don't know when you're going to be world famous, do you? So it's far more a direction for you and most importantly for your team. It's an inspiration for your team to come to work. If it's only dollars that's getting them to work, I think keeping staff is going to be kind of difficult. They need to believe this vision as much as you do. And it's not something that we often share with clients. And the reason why is, to be really frank, clients don't really care around your future success. They care about now, but they don't really care about your future success. So there's not the what's in it for me factor, but there's definitely a what's in it for me factor when it comes to your team and staff. And Lisa will talk more about how this needs to be, part of your induction, and a very, very strong part about why they should get up and come and work for you each morning. Look, I think a really good example of this is John F. Kennedy and his vision for the space program. He visited NASA shortly before he was assassinated, and he spoke to a blue-collar worker in the restrooms, and he asked him what he did. And he replied, "I helped put men on the moon." Kennedy was absolutely stunned. Here was a cleaner, totally enrolled and playing his part in Kennedy's vision. So again, I ask you, what would your team say if you asked them that exact question? Here's a little bit about the relationship between the vision and the brand. Brands bring visions to life. It's around how you and your team act, behave, speak, engage, and look. So those are another big reason why walking the talk and walking your vision every day is really, really important. I often say to my clients, you always need to act, behave, and speak where you want to be, not where you are today, which sounds a little bit odd, doesn't it? Let me give you a personal example around that. When I started my company around 10 years ago, I kind of had this crappy laptop and this equally crappy car, and I'd always sort of park 5 minutes down the road from my clients or prospect offices. But look, when I was in front of them, I acted like I had 10 staff, 25 clients, real flash offices, and drove a Rolls Royce. In fact, I had none of those things. But my vision was to be big. That was my vision, was to be really big. So I was really expert in acting as if I had achieved that vision. It's a little bit of fake it till you make it. So look, yeah, here's a personal story. Let's have a look at some characteristics and features of some really, really good vision. So when you're writing your vision, keep these things in mind. Again, in our resources, we've got some templates for that. So, look, I thought I'd carry on my theme with John F. Kennedy. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. So that's really clearly destination obvious. Bringing it home, Fonterra's vision is to provide dairy for everyone, everywhere, every day. So again, another very strongly destination obvious vision. Look, they just need to be bold and plain speaking. No, it doesn't need to be kind of long and go on and on and on. Imagine a world where we don't exist. I think that's a very brave thing for Oxfam to say. Here's a simple statement of optimism. I love this one. We make the world a more sociable place, Ryan Nathan. Look, I always like to give some Kiwi examples as well. To have a creative people striving together to transform our world, another example. That's actually an engineering consultancy that we work for, and it's interesting because we often think of engineers as being far more technical than creative, but they were really clear that was something that creativity was going to solve some of the world's biggest engineering issues. So that was part of their vision. To become a world leader at connecting people to wildlife and conservation, that's actually Hamilton Zoo. So pretty brave and bold, huh? A great world in that, being a world leader. Our vision is that people everywhere will share the power of a wish. So when a wish, we all know that charity. If I couldn't go past this one, our salon would change the way we think about the haircut. That's actually my hairdresser. So some visions are just purely pragmatic. Another charity to spread the power of optimism. Lastly, a large kitchen company, make kitchens that people love, rave, and enjoy. So look, I hope that's given you some really good examples. As I said, there is some templates and frameworks to help you work through your vision, but I can't help, to say it enough times, it is something that's really important, especially to share it with your staff, walk the talk, so they kind of work out where the destination is for them. Okay, our values. So, this is the kind of very emotive, personal side of branding that really, connects to you. And hence we often say, win the heart, get the mind for free. I really like that. Values are the things that matter most to you, that shape your actions with all your stakeholders, both internally and externally. So let's have a little look. As a SME owner, your company values and your personal values are often very, very similar, if not the same. For example, if you're honest and upfront in your personal life, then you're usually going to be that in your business life. Values create, focus and priority. We channel our efforts and attention into what we have decided as important. And you saw this during COVID. If looking after your staff is important, then COVID was a key priority time to demonstrate that. Culture is totally based around our values. They determined what happened and why, and they also determined the way that we do business. I think a really good example of this just recently is Stuff New Zealand withdrawing their Facebook advertising due to Facebook's lack of action around monitoring hate speech. It sent a very, very strong message. Starbucks did this as well. Levi Strauss did this as well. And as I say, I think it really sent a strong message to the market. Perhaps one of the oldest brands that, demonstrated this also was the Body Shop, around their stand on animal testing and how that reflected in their products. You get, a lot of people talking about their values around sustainability, right from, recycling through to the cars they drive and so forth. Look, one of the things I will say is make sure it's something that is really deeply rooted in your beliefs rather than what's faddish at the time. Because if it's a fad that you're acting on, consumers will detect that very, very quickly, and it has the potential to almost destroy your brand rather than build it. And also decisions are based more on values than rational analysis. So quite often we talk about, it just felt right, and it's very intuitive, and then we look for the rational facts to actually substantiate that. So that's kind of how values actually play out. I thought it might be quite good to have a little quiz to see whether you can guess some company values. So here's some values of a very successful American company. So awesome American values, no cynicism, creativity, dreams and imagination, magic. I reckon you'd probably guess this in about a heartbeat. So let's see if we're right. Yeah, I'm imagining you kind of guessed it was Disney. And you guessed it's Disney because they walk those values and they live those values every single day. We don't even have to have gone, to any of their properties. If we just watch a movie and have a relationship and buy some of their merchandise, I think we would have picked them up because they're totally consistent in delivering and walking the talk around them each and every day. Let's have a look at another example. So again, this is a big American public, or was a big American publicly listed company. Here was their values. Look, when we talk about communication, respect, integrity, excellence, I find those are really vague and quite vanilla, almost beige. And because they are, it's really, really hard for staff especially and your team to really understand what the values mean. So I really suggest you dig deep, and really try and give some rationale behind your values. So anyway, here we go. I'm not sure whether any of you picked this up, but it actually was Enron. So Enron, as I said, was a publicly listed company in the US. It went into bankruptcy, losing $74 billion in 4 years. And it also lost billions in pension benefits for its employees. So you can safely say Enron did not walk the talk with its values each and every day at all. So yeah, two very diverse examples there. Okay. Oh, and another thing about values of just in our resources, I've actually got a link to almost like, there's almost 100 values that you can help you think about and really help you when you're kind of writing your list and brainstorming with your team and those kind of things. So that's an excellent resource in terms of your values. Okay, lastly is personality. So in our here, think of the stick figure. as part of your personality that needs some character, some traits, and some attributes. And we're going to dress him or her up, and this stick man is going to be you, your company. Human characteristics of your brand make you interesting and relatable. And when people like you, again, they become very loyal to you. This needs to be reflected in our people, of course, which are our daily brand ambassadors. So yeah. Again, your personality, your company personality is often quite similar to your own personality. So if you're loud and outgoing in your personal life, it's usually that in your business life. Like a human personality, it's distinctive and enduring and often emotive. For example, solid as a rock. I really like values that have phrases rather than individual words, because it really helps your team understand them and therefore act on them. It's often built over time, so customers just don't get this stuff immediately. It's kind of not good to kind of run a digital campaign or to have an internal campaign and you just expect people to get immediately what your personality is. It is actually endured over time. And again, we'll go back to those experiences we talked about at the very first part of the presentation, where we talked about, how you answer that phone, how you deal with that complaint. Customers define your personality and values by the experience that they've had with your company. So yeah, just things to remember when you're really defining what your personality is. So look, I use this example. So, how would you describe these two bike riding personalities? They're both bike riders, right? I think the top one we kind of call a more salt of the earth, Kiwi guy. The bottom one is more a racy, manly, macho type of guy. But, they're still bike riders. And if we relate that to our sectors in an industry, it's a really good example that within your sector and your industry, you may be, fast-moving consumer goods, you may be either professional services, you may be a charity, but one way you can differentiate yourself clearly is through your personality. So most importantly, your brand personality is often a sustainable point of differentiation. And I love this because it's sustainable, because only you can be the best at you. That image there is staring at me, so I'm going to move on. Look, I think I want to use the Pizza Hut example here to say how brand can be a competitive advantage. So here we have, before Whole Pizza came into the market, it was, the pizza market was totally dominated by big players like Pizza Hut and Domino's. And then along came Whole Pizza. And Whole Pizza had all the personality in the world. But you know what? They just sold pizza. Some people may think they sell pizza better than others, but ultimately they just sold pizza. And a lot of the market the market share was already dominated by the key players. So it was a bit of a dangerous move. However, they came in as a differentiator with plenty of attitude to boot. They were cheeky, they were provocative, well, they still are, and very controversial, capitalizing on whatever is current. Are much like a naughty teenager, but it has worked for them in terms of extending really good, solid market share. So as an example of what they do in their marketing, to my right is a billboard covered in hundreds of real rabbit skins with pelt covered billboard proclaiming the pizza is made from real rabbit, like this billboard. So quite attention grabbing and really zoning in on Easter with all its different assets. And here I had to put another billboard here was around tourists. We had those really misbehaving tourists, when we did have tourists in New Zealand, from the UK. And so they took this billboard out. I love this, may contain ants and hair. Oh, yeah. So really campaigning on things that are current, but always being true to their personality. So like them, love them, or hate them, they're consistent with their marketing, with their messaging, and their in-store experience. So as I say, you may find yourself in a market where it's really hard to differentiate your products and services. Everything's just quite generic. In that case, brand is an excellent way to provide that definition. Point of difference. Also, you may find yourself in a market that's really, really price sensitive. So there's not many ways you can actually move within your category. Again, brand is a good way to make that point of difference. How people, buy your products and service just may be bog standard. So again, branding and personality and values may be one of those ways that helps you stand out from the crowd. Okay, so look, just summing it up, here's our 4 blocks: purpose, vision, values, and personality. Lisa's going to talk more about those from an internal perspective as well. But there are a lot of resources to help you at the back of this presentation. And my hope is that you see branding is far more than just a logo. So what have we talked about today? Internally, your brand is made up of your company vision, mission, values, and personality. Together as a leader, they shape your behavior, your decisions, your priorities, and your future. Externally, your brand is what customers and prospects experience when dealing with you, from finding a car park to signing a contract to sitting in your reception area, which you and your people help deliver. A brand drives everything you do, including your marketing, how you position your company in the market. This includes digital and non-digital. And lastly, a brand can be your competitive advantage, as no one can replicate you. So I really hope you understand the power of that. So just wrapping up, here's our resources section that I quickly spoke about. Here's some of our templates that we have here as well. Here's the golden circle. Here's our things around our personality and values. And lastly, we have an ebook here that you can download. It's called Is Your Brand Costing You Customers? So that's a free ebook for you to download. So I hope you have found this interesting. And to give more impact internally to all this brand stuff, it's over to you, Lisa.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rosina. That's really great. If you'd just like to leave your screen up for a second, if that's all right, people may still be copying down those details. Guys, if you've got any questions for Rosina, now's a great time to ask them. You can either just pop any questions or comments right in the chat window, or alternatively in our Q&A. So if you've got any questions, now's a great time to ask them. So Rosina, you did talk a lot about those building blocks and how they all work together. You also talked about the importance of an emotional connection. What are some of the things that people can do to really find what their emotional connection should be and then communicate that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, I think it's part of it is grounded in who you are. If I use Whittaker's, I think they always had it in their DNA that they wanted to be a Kiwi, to take on the big boys. I think that was always part of their vision. That was very, very entrenched into what they wanted to do. They wanted to win the big block category. So there was that. So I think it's got to be something that's in your DNA. It's got to be something that's in your vision. I think too, another important part too is a bit of customer research and thinking about, what your customers, how they view you, and how you can build in that emotional connection is another important part as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, everyone, if you do have any questions that come to mind for Rosina anytime during the presentation, just feel free to pop those in the chat, and Rosina will be on at the end to ask any further questions. But thank you very much, Rosina. It's great to get that information through today and work through. So look, guys, we're going to move straight on to our second speaker for today. It's Lisa McKay from HR Toolkit. Lisa describes her mission as to educate, to empower, and to equip business owners to get HR right. And very excited to be able to welcome her to leading the next section of our webinar and working through her presentation. So Lisa, if you'd like to, you should be able to move forward and share your screen.
Cool. Well, thank you very much indeed, Grant. And hi, everybody who's on the webinar. So I'll just jump onto sharing my screen. There we go. We're in the correct thing now. Right, so rocking 2021, let's put 2020 behind us. But following on from what Rosina's been talking about, I'm talking about that internal brand versus your external brand. So what do I mean by that? As a lot, reflecting again, a lot of what Rosina's already talking about, our people are the face of our business. Customers will judge on what they see, and what they've experienced with us, but they presume we have the technical knowledge. You know, if we're out there selling supplements or doing recruitment for them, then they are presuming that we have the technical skill. What they can judge us on is what they can see and experience. So are we actually getting that right? So, hey, if your internal brand, if your brand vision is we want to be really friendly, yeah, that one's missing the mark. You're passionate about what we do. If that's what your receptionist looks like, you're definitely missing the mark. Neat and tidy. I've got some workers on site at the moment digging our driveway. And certainly, you know, and the guy turns up, he's a digger driver, he's working in a pretty rough environment, and he's got torn t-shirt and all the rest of it. And you're like, well, do you really know what you're doing? I don't know too much about digger driving, but you aren't looking the part for me. And it is, you do have to think about what, I did make comment to the boss about that, and I must admit, everybody's turned up with uniforms since then. Professional. So it's not just about your brand in the office. It's also about the brand on Friday night. And particularly, and I have had quite a few issues with staff who are, you know, misbehaving on the weekends, or going out on a Friday night after work drinks, and they're still wearing branded t-shirts or driving a branded car. These are part of your brand image. So, or the image that you have out there in the world. So some of the basics around internal brand and what you need to be portraying and what you need to be reflecting. It's all well and good for us to say, well, we want to be a company that equips people with the tools and knowledge to do HR themselves. But if we're not actually walking that walk, then how does this come across? So, you know, do you have a dress code? Do you need a dress code? Do you have a uniform? Do you need a uniform? What are the rules of your organization? If you want to be a very creative organization, but then you've got very, very rigid rules, are you attracting the people who will want? Creatives don't like rules and rigidity. So if you've got very strict rules, are you actually attracting the people that you need to portray your image? Or if you're giving too much flexibility, is it creating a differing image from what you actually want to portray? So I'll come into this a bit more. So, you know, just some basic ones. Timekeeping, phone answering protocols. So, you know, personally, I'm very much an on-time person. And so I will be at a meeting on time. But I know other people who will be, I mean, my aunt is a terror. You tell, if you want her there at 4 o'clock, you tell her that she has to be there at 3 o'clock because she will be an hour late. But is this important? So what does your brand need around its rules? And I'll be coming on to this a bit more. So I'm just going to look first off at image. So for different environments, what is the image? Is this a professional image, or do you need a more corporate image? Now, this is quite an interesting one. I had from a personal experience, I had a situation, we were making somebody redundant. It was a very senior staff member, and she engaged a QC in this process to represent her. And this QC, Queen's Counsel, comes in, and it was very, very high powered, and I'm such and such QC. And he took one look at me, and I was dressed not dissimilarly to what I am now. You're sitting in the sort of professional, but smart casual. And he just dismissed me. He did not believe that just one look at me, I wasn't wearing a suit, therefore I didn't know what I was talking about. Now, this then played forward, and we ended up in mediation, and I did have a long chats with the customer about what we were doing, but I continued very deliberately to maintain that smart casual, very much not corporate image, because the fact that he was underestimating what I was doing actually ended up turning on his head, and the mediator, who was another very senior gentleman, turned around and said afterwards it was the first time he'd ever seen that particular gentleman drop his claim for his fee, which would have been about $20,000. So yeah, by actually putting the image out there, it gained for our client. Now, the other thing with this image thing around corporate versus professional, one thing that quite often comes up is receptionists. And yeah, often it is the young girl who is sitting on the reception desk and wearing her best Saturday night outfit. Really smart. As far as she's concerned, it is her best outfit. She's really chuffed about it. Unfortunately, it might be great Saturday night in the nightclub, but with a skirt up to your wherever and cleavage down to wherever, not appropriate for the office. So how do you actually address that if you've got people who are, the reality is, people do things for what they perceive to be the right reasons. So you've got somebody who genuinely thinks that they are so smart. You've actually got to kind of burst their bubble a bit on that one and say, no, it's not actually what's appropriate for the office here. One of the things, I have done it before, I've done it with my own team, is actually send them to an image consultant. I personally went to see an image consultant. It was a really amazing experience to actually go out shopping for a day. Hey, I enjoy shopping. But actually going through what is the image I want to portray and how do I actually dress to reflect that. Another thing around image is whether or not you need a uniform or not. Now, in a restaurant, high-end restaurant, absolutely, you expect the waiting staff to be in uniform. You have a tradie turn up at your house, you expect them to be in a uniform. But then if you've got a very creative workforce, it would look totally wrong if you walked into, say, a marketing agency like Energize and they're all wearing exactly the same uniform. It wouldn't say to you creative. So you need to think about what here again is that you're creating around that image. Rules versus flexibility. So some people are on-time people. I'm a very on-time, and some people sort of exist in time. It kind of flexes around them and they kind of turn up when they want to. Now, in creative land, yep, most people are more in time and it's a bit more flexible and that sort of thing. So if you've got an organization which you are saying you will be at your desk at 8:30 doing productive work, not necessarily going to work in a creative environment. However, if you are in trades environment whereby you've told the customer that somebody will be there at 10 o'clock, the customer expects them to be there at 10 o'clock, not phoning, and the customer will be getting pretty darn grumpy if they're getting the phone calls. Oh, well, you know, I'll be there in about half an hour-ish. So again, this is about thinking about what are the rules that you need for your organization to reflect that brand. Creativity versus rigidity, and that's where, you know, do you need to be rigid? Some things that you do need to be rigid about, but some things you may be blocking creativity, or you may be blocking the kind of people that you want within your organization. Now, do you need strict protocols on everything, or do they need flexibility to do it their way? So does your role really matter? Now, for example, at HR Toolkit, I'm a very on-time person. Frances, who was my GM, she was more of an in-time person, used to drive me insane at times. But did it really matter? Some things, yes, it did. Actually, if she'd made an appointment with the customer, she needed to turn up on time. But if she didn't come into the office until 9 o'clock, hey, didn't really matter. The work still got done. She still had her mobile with her. So if somebody really needed to get hold of her urgently, the fact that she didn't turn up until 9 o'clock, so what? It doesn't really matter. You need to think about whether those rules matter. The other thing here you need to think about is what are the consequences of doing it, of letting them do it their way. So in a creative environment, so Rosina, I'm sure if I went to Rosina herself, then she would come up with one brand image, one interpretation of what I was doing. But if I went to a member of her team, they might come up with something a little bit different, probably on the same wavelength, but not necessarily exactly the same. Or it might be something totally different. Now, is it okay for Rosina to be able to let that go? Or is it important that things are actually done right? So for my business, again, we're working within the framework of employment law. There are consequences. We could be sued if people get too creative. So yes, there are consequences of things being done differently, but within a framework of there is a parameter around the advice that I give may be slightly different to the advice that another member of my team gives. Not all legally compliant, they have to be that, but it may not be as exactly the same word for word. So again, what's the consequences there of allowing people to do things their way? So what are some of your solutions? How do you actually get this stuff right? So one of the things is review or introduce a code of conduct. Go back and have a read of it. If you've got a code of conduct in place, what is the tone of it? Is it saying, do this, do that, do the other? Or is it, hey, as long as we deliver excellent service to our customers, then fantastic. Let's get on and do it. Fall out of line, hey, we're going to pull you up, but we're going to give you a degree of scope. So depends on your organization and what you are trying to portray. One of the big things where the company image is, it defines what people are attracted to your organization, who actually want to come and work for you, what experience those potential new employees have, and what image that they have is created during those very early stages in the employment relationship. So, you know, what is your recruitment process? Is it pretty lackadaisical, or is it quite structured? What was important that you, or what did you portray as being important during the recruitment process? Are your employment agreements, that's one of the first things that a potential employee is going to say about what is this company all about. Now, if you have a very highly legalistic employment contract, which is, I mean, many employment contracts I look at, and they will be, you know, 30 pages long, and 25 pages of that are how am I going to fire you? Hey, it's not the best. Some of that stuff has to be in there. I did have a little funny side one on this. I was recently writing some employment contracts for a company that recruits Santas. And in the employment contract, they had actually replaced the word employee with Santa. And I tell you, when you're reading through a contract and going, all the ways that you can fire Santa, I tell you, I'm off the Christmas card list. I'm definitely on the naughty list. So think back, have a read of that employment contract. Yes, it has to be legally compliant, but the languaging doesn't actually have to be nasty and horrible. The HR Toolkit one's very much designed to be user-friendly, cover your legal requirements, absolutely, but in language that A, can be understood, and B, doesn't sound too horrible and nasty. What's your induction process? Do you have an induction process at all? So when somebody starts with you, are they welcomed into the team, or is it a, oh God, yes, you're starting today, right, need to sort out a computer for you, right, oh, we've got to sort a desk for you. No, oh my God, what a horrendous first impression that person's going to get. And how are you communicating the rules and culture? Are you communicating them clearly what you want? And the other one is check your own image as the boss. What is the image you are portraying? You want your team to turn up on time, but then you are actually turning up half an hour late every morning. Doesn't work. You've got to make sure that your image, the company image, and what you are portraying to the world is actually congruent. And hey, when interpretation doesn't match what you want. So the first thing, double check, is it really an issue? Does it matter if they are at work, ready to start productive work at 8:30? Nip issues in the bud quickly. People do the wrong things for what they perceive to be the right reasons. So often the receptionist turning up wearing her Saturday best outfit, actually yep, it might not be right for what you want, but she is doing her absolute best. So it's just about, hey, actually, the skirt needs to be a little bit longer. The cleavage needs to be a little bit less. And as teams grow, yes, you do need to get more rigid, because more people equals more interpretations. And that is one of the biggest difficulties for small businesses as you grow, is you may want, you know, lots of creativity and have a really fun and vibrant environment and all the rest of it. You want to set up this wonderful mini Google. Google has actually got quite a lot of rules because they need them, so that everybody is actually on the same page and is interpreting the same way. So I'm very quickly I'm conscious of the time, so I'm very quickly going to run through the communication model and how do you actually overcome some of the barriers that you may be experiencing having some conversations with staff. So every moment there are 2 million bits of information coming at us. Now, our brains cannot possibly deal with 2 million bits of information. In fact, there's 7+ bits of information, 7+ or minus 2 bits of information that goes straight into our conscious minds. Personally, I think it's 7+ for females and 7- for males, but that's an unproven theory. Sorry to all the blokes out there. And then there's 153 bits of information that goes straight into our unconscious minds. And through our lives, it's this 160 bits of information out of 2 million, out of every moment throughout our lives, which goes to make up our feelings, values, and beliefs. And it's these feelings, values, and beliefs which dictate our behavior. And our behavior leads to our results. Now, our brains are really smart. We delete information that we don't need or we don't think we need. So we don't need to know how many times the phone has rung in the last 10 minutes, but the next time the phone rings, you'll probably hear it. We generalize. You've never got into my car and driven it, but this is why you'll get into a new car, provided you've got a license, obviously. You get a new car, you flick on the indicators, and this happens. Because you're driving your own car, you're not driving my car. Or you distort. You fill in the blanks based on your previous experience. So if you've ever met somebody who's got, for an example, an Asian origin face, and then they open their mouth and they come out with a broad Glaswegian accent, it jars. It's not that you're being racist, it's just that your brain has told you a whole bunch of things about that person when you've seen the hair color, the skin tone, the eye shape, and you have overlaid a bunch of information. Now, we also do this with brand. So a couple of the people who are on the call, I had a quick look at Explosive Supplements. So Danielle, I had a quick look at your website there, very much about vibrant and all the rest of it. So my expectation already when I go into Explosive Supplements or talk to somebody there is that it will be vibrant and quite young and funky and things like that. So that's what I'm expecting. If I then met a grey-haired old granny in a Zimmer frame as being the head of Explosive Supplements, I'll be like, no, must be somebody else. It's not the head of Explosive Supplements. So we do make our presumptions about brand before we've even met anybody from the brand. But then we also take on board what happens once we're involved with that brand. And what are the chances of two people taking on exactly the same bits of information? Now, bearing in mind, there's 2 million bits of information floating around in there. There's 153 bits of information that each of us are going to take out of that. And 7 bits of information that are going into the conscious brain. So what do you think the chances of 2 people taking exactly the same interpretation out of all of that information? Well, pretty low. In fact, if you can manage to get 2 totally common bits of information, then you're actually doing pretty well. So give yourself a break. Look, we can't possibly have all taken on the same 160 bits of information out of every moment. It is okay to check for understanding. If somebody is doing something wrong in our eyes, or a customer is interpreting wrongly what we're doing or what we're trying to portray for them, maybe we need to re-explain or listen to what they are saying and understand things. Hey, and this applies to colleagues, customers, family members, whatever. And so what are your learnings? Define your brand. Energize, awesome for this. Check what you are portraying throughout the employment life cycle. Is it really in line with what you want? And nip misinterpretations in the bud early. And if you do have issues, then be specific and clear about what is an issue and why. Remember, the chances of that, the information getting across, you get 2 bits of information, so you need to make sure you hit the mark with those 2 bits of information. So, any questions? And I'll try and escape from that and jump back. There we go. Fran, Unmute.
Thanks, Lisa. If anyone's got any questions now is a great time to pop those either in the chat or in the Q&A box. That includes questions for both Lisa and also for Rosina. So, Lisa, at the start of your talk, you talked a little about how companies can wind up with a number of different interpretations of a single brand, and it can become quite confusing. What are your top tips for owners to help get on the journey of reducing those down?
Be clear and be concise. The clearer you are, the easier it is. So for example, with HR Toolkit, our vision is to empower small business owners with the tools and knowledge to do HR themselves. Equip them with tools and knowledge and empower them. And so every discussion is about how are we helping them do it themselves.
Excellent, thank you. That makes perfect sense. Now, towards the end of your presentation, you had a diagram up talking about how people take information in.
Yep.
Now, I guess every individual is going to take different bits of information in. So how can we as owners try and ensure that our most important bits of information rise to the top of people who are watching?
A large chunk is about interpretation for individuals. It is about being clear and specific. I will be a link to the communication model is going out with this presentation as well. So, you know, it is about being specific, defining the problem, and getting them to repeat back what you've told them. So you might have a conversation with that receptionist in her Saturday night best and say, hey, look, you know, that skirt's a little short, maybe. And she's still sitting there going, well, maybe I could put a lace trim on the bottom of it. Then it'll be longer. And it's like, actually, that outfit looks awesome on a Saturday night. But in the workplace, you do need to be wearing trousers. I won't say pants. That's an entirely another story. You do need to be wearing trousers, slacks, or skirt that's at least halfway down your calves or halfway down your thighs. So it's specific.
Yeah, so the more specific you can make it, the less confusion there is for everybody, and understanding where the ground rules are obviously really helps employees to be able to do their best without wondering or needing to ask difficult questions. So that's great. So thank you very much. So Rosina, if people would like to know some more about the topics that you've covered today, or would like to find out some more about Energize, how do they do that?
Look, it's most of the information's in our pack that we in our notes. But look, Rosina at energize.net.nz is a pretty good way to also just get in contact with me.
Thank you very much. And Lisa, for you, if people would like to find out some more about your talk today, or especially the tools from HR Toolkit, how do they do that?
So they can visit hrtoolkit.co.nz. Contact me on 021 741 544 or email me on lisa@hrtoolkit.co.nz.
Fantastic, that's wonderful. Well, thank you very much to both of you for the presentations this morning. Very informative and thought-provoking, which is wonderful for all the people that we've got both on the call today and also who will be watching through this on the recording. So Lisa and Rosina, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a great opportunity to work through this material, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy both reviewing today and also going forward from here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.